Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi and welcome back to the podcast. We are here in the treehouse. I've just tried to scare off a cockatoo unsuccessfully, but he did eventually fly off. Today I wanted to talk about hustle culture. Well, that was kind of the topic that we were thinking of talking about, and we're actually doing this as sort of an arc, really, of 3 conversations that we wanted to have over the next 3 episodes. And they're all kind of interlinked. Yeah. And the first one addresses hustle culture.
Okay.
And to do that, there are sort of 3 main characteristics of hustle culture that I thought we'd touch on.
Okay, cool.
Is there anything that you wanted to say about it before we launch in?
Well, maybe we could just define it, what it is. What do you think? Or what do I think? What
do you think? You're the wise sage.
Yeah, right. So hustle culture in my head is a nickname for a culture where someone is continually, other people call it growth mindset, growth culture. So it's this idea that I'm here now. Where I really want to be is I want to be here. Mm-hmm. I'm operating at this level. I'd like to operate at that level. So we can talk about, let's go to the next level. Let's level up. And it has to do with performance. It has to do with when it's not being spoken about as performance, people will say, well, I just want to be the best version of myself, right? And so we're not in, so in that regard, it's a form of self-improvement or growth or moving the dial forward. I mean, I've often had, really focused clients that go, I could never have a partner who didn't want to grow, didn't want to move forward. And so the intent behind that's really positive, right? People want to keep taking ground. They want to keep growing. They want to keep developing. They want to get the most out of life. Mm-hmm. They want to be the best parents they could possibly be. They want to have great relationships. They want to be engaged. They want to have a vibrant, engaged life. So at that point, there's none of that is actually a problem, mm-hmm. right? The challenge that where we would start to lean into hustle culture and maybe challenge some of the ideas in it is that hustle culture, there's this little switch that flicks that where you set the intention and the goal, and all of a sudden there's this subtle psychological shift inside of you where the goal becomes the thing. And so now the goal is actually driving my life as opposed to being present, turning up, all this sort of stuff.
I'm living my life and the goal is, natural fruition of that.
Well, it stops becoming that. It stops becoming I'm living my life and the natural. So when it shifts into hustle culture, the goal becomes everything. You just become a mechanism that's driving that output.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If in its worst form, not in its best form of setting intention and having wonderful relationships and growing and developing and loving and the best you possibly can, but the danger in it is there's a moment where a switch gets flicked, and it moves from being that, which is enormously positive, to now this thing is driving everything.
Yeah.
So now I need to run marathons, and now so I go from being someone that's concerned about my health who wants to go for a walk or stay mobile, or just like now I'm 52 and I actually want to run a half marathon. I want to run a marathon. I want to run 3 marathons this year. And I'm using that as a silly example. It's actually not that silly. You just have to look at the number of middle-aged men in Lycra riding bikes on a weekend. You know what I mean? And they're all dressed in Tour de France gear.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because you can't just go for a ride on a bike anymore. You've got to dress up like,
Yeah.
Michael Cavendish or whoever it is, and have all that. And then we just can't just go for a ride. We've got to go for I'm into it,
Yeah, so it's not being anti-goal. It's when that goal or when that thing that you want to do becomes everything because you've offloaded a whole bunch of your identity and worth into achieving that.
Yeah, and the whole idea about that is, if I was this kind of, I want to be this kind of person, a person who can do this, and this. And so this is why we call it hustle culture. So then you as an individual are constantly hustling to get to that point.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? That's why we call it hustle culture or grind culture or any number of different things, so it's not, so again, like everything we talk about, there's a little bit of a nuance in it, but it's just this idea that at some point, formation, development, growth starts to become highly goal-orientated or intention and or goal-orientated, and then the intention starts to drive a life that becomes very much about hustling toward that thing.
Got it.
And that becomes the whole program. Yeah.
So that's our working definition.
That's kind of what I think. That's my working definition of it, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I've got some notes here too, just so that I can remember. But the kind of first of the three characteristics that I want to tap into within that sort of umbrella term of hustle culture is productivity as personal worth.
Yeah.
And this is kind of tied to this idea that your value and your identity is directly related to your output or, the shit that we're getting done.
Yeah, for sure. So, because it's like that whenever you engage anything, like you become a member of a golf club and you get a handicap and then you want to get your handicap down.
Yeah.
Which is not the end of golf. It's not that. I mean, that's not the reason everyone will say, well, don't you want to just get better? If you buy a sailboat, don't you want to learn to sail it well? It's fine. But then after a while, I used to play golf with an old guy and we didn't talk at all or connect on the golf course. And he didn't count his strokes. He counted his points.
Right.
Okay. I got 3 points on that, or I got 2 points, or I don't get a point, and it became, playing with him was like working with an abacus. It was like, it was racking up points. It's like, oh, okay, did you enjoy the golf? Oh, yeah, I got 50 points. No one got 50 points unless you're cheating. I 36. It's like, oh, okay. How was golf today? Well, I got 36 points. It's like, I want a chook. It's like, okay, great. Now there's going to be a lot of people out there that go, hey, what's the problem with that? The only time that becomes a problem is when there's something about the thing that you're doing loses meaning unless it's achieving that. So, and I've fallen into this, right? Like in my 40s, I was a middle-aged man with Lycra riding a bike, right? And I used to do this ride through the national park. And when I started, it was just a form of torture, actually, because there was a lot of hills. And so when I started, it was just a great way to feel. It was a great way to waste an hour and 40 minutes, like half walking up hills because I'm dead, right? After about a year, it was a 23K loop, and after about a year, it became about how fast am I doing this?
Yeah.
How quickly can I get around that loop?
Yes.
I wasn't riding through the national park and enjoying the water on the right and just enjoying the isolation of being out on my own, doing something where there was literally no one else.
Yeah.
It just became about, that wasn't great.
Yeah.
I was 40 seconds slower than yesterday.
This is quite common though, because we have a very utilitarian approach to work culture. And of course that kind of bleeds over into everything else.
Yeah, I think it does. There might be some people out there who don't know what utilitarian means, right? So when we talk about being utilitarian, we talk about the idea that everything has to, like, it's fundamentally about usefulness, right? What utility or usefulness does this serve? You know, what service does it provide, and how does that work? And so when we become utilitarian, we enter into our world and we're looking around and we're trying to think about outputs, which means that we are just constantly, like, how can I make this work? How can I get here? How can I get an output and an outcome from doing this particular thing? What is the use of that? What's the point of that? What's the purpose of that? Right?
Absolutely. This is sort of like the basis of, well, not the ideological base of capitalism, but really we now have a world where we're trying to maximize efficiency. We're trying to get as much done at as little cost as possible. And we have workplaces full of people who just go, I'm so exhausted, I'm so overworked, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah. And it's funny in that, because the enemy of utility is actually bureaucracy, right? So bureaucratic process is largely, disliked by everyone, because bureaucratic process, getting papers signed, double checking, all this, like going through processes, right? So getting a renovation on your house goes through so much bureaucracy as you get an architect, get a plan, submit the plan, get engineering drawings done, get approvals, get surveys, I just wanted to build a deck.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put an extra bedroom on, and I've got $30,000 worth of expenses just in approvals, which is more than the cost of the freaking bedroom that I wanted to put on. Whereas back in the old days, Jimmy just got out there with a hammer and put just put a bedroom on. So bureaucracy is kind of the enemy of utility and that sort of stuff. And we have people who are working in, we have so many people who work in bureaucratic kind of contexts, whether it's a school or whether you're in a hospital or healthcare or whatever it is, right? Whether you're in banking or some dynamic, there's all this stuff that you have to go through. So people kind of at the front end really like utility, because it's like, can we just get this done? Can we just get some efficiency and effectiveness are two key words. Can we just get it done? Can we just be a bit more efficient, a bit more effective? And it becomes a really attractive thing. So utility is not just, the demon of industrialization. It's actually, no, we want to get stuff done. We want to get it. We want to get a result. The problem is when you make a person a part in a machine.
Right.
I'm just approaching Jessica as this person who is to give me an output. You're just here to serve an end.
Yeah.
Right? That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because it minimizes the person. It's not seeing the person for who they are. It's seeing the person as what she can produce.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of feeds back into that main characteristic. When we are so used to operating in this way, then that is impressed upon our sense of value and our sense of worth. So we're tied to how productive am I being? What am I getting done? And then you may have a day at work where it's a very full day, but there's no tangible result. So that's a bad day. Do you know what I mean? But all of the things that you did may eventually contribute towards that thing getting done, but you don't feel any sense of accomplishment because you're so busy tying all of that.
Well, things like busyness become a marker of engagement, right?
Right. This is our second point too.
Oh, right. Well, things like, I guess that all of that whole package just becomes, very, as you was alluding to, very tied to getting a result. Right. And when you get a result, it feels like a win. It feels like progress. It feels like this is good. We landed that. We got that project delivered. The 3 KPIs of project managers, it was on time, on budget, and within scope. Tick, tick, tick. We reached that target. We projected those goals. We got there. There's kind of, again, there's inherently nothing wrong with setting the intention, having the vision, having the goals, having success markers. Great. Being, even at a personal level, nothing wrong with that at all, right? I don't want anyone to think that we're anti-growth, right, or anti-moving forward. What we're saying is the danger with hustle culture is that there's this moment where the transaction shifts from being vision and goal orientated, from being the value that this goal adds to my life, to my family, to my workplace, and it just becomes a marker. And now I'm in service of the marker. That's the danger of that.
I think that's a really important point, and I think that is particularly problematic or particularly challenging when we look at it from a way of the heart perspective, because we're shifting our center of gravity from being to doing.
Yeah, no, well, that's our point altogether, right? Is that we're not human, is that, way of the heart, we would say unequivocally that we don't become, right? So the human project is not a project of becoming, it's a project of being, right? So that's our whole, that's very much the fundamental idea of way of the heart is you're not, the idea here is not about what can I become if I push forward, what can I produce, what impact can that production have if I, how now I can measure who I really am because because I can push myself to do this, It's like I when I was in my 40s, I rode from Sydney to the highest part of Australia.
Yeah.
567 kilometres.
I remember.
Right? It was brutal over 5 days. And I did it with another guy. It's just two of us, so it's not some big peloton, hauling me along in the wake. It was like me and this tiny guy and me looking at his bum for 5 days. It's like he was 53 kilos, I was 115. So he scooted off on the hills and I caught him on the way down. Gravity was against me and then gravity was all for me. Anyway, we rode this out, and he's a very good bike rider, and I wasn't. I was like the elephant in the circus image for you. And we got to Charlotte's Pass, and we went to the very, very top, which is the highest point. And he said, now we've got to ride down, which is just, a couple of 100 metres, and we've got to kiss the door of the chalet. And so I thought, okay, I've never kissed a chalet before, and so we rode down and we hopped off and we kissed the door of the chalet. And he said to me, you have done something that hardly any Australians will ever do.
Yeah.
I was like, and in my head, all I could think of was, yeah, because it was shit. It was like I can understand why most Australians won't do that, because that was one of the worst 5 days of my life. You know what I mean?
I also feel like you never got on a bike again after.
I did. I came home.
I don't remember you biking ever again after that.
Yeah. No, I did. I came home and there was a bunch of guys who, only there was 3 guys that would go for a ride every Saturday morning or every Sunday morning, I think. And they would always beat me up the hills because I was always bigger than everyone, So but after riding to Charlotte's Pass, I went for a ride with these guys, and as we came up out of the hill, I smashed them.
And that is what made it all worse.
I smashed them by like a long way. I got off my bike and I sat down on a bus seat, waiting for them to come, looking really relaxed, like I just had a cigarette and a coffee and a baguette waiting for you. It took so long. I was hungry, It's like, and after that moment of ridiculous egoic aggrandizement, I just went, no, I actually do hate this sport.
So bad.
But the interesting thing was, my friend who kissed the chalet door, like for him, it was like, this tells us something about us.
Yeah.
And I go, no, this tells you that I've got a sore ass. That's about it. That's all it tells you.
I had a follow-up point and that's completely gone now. I got so wrapped up in that.
Yeah. But you see how, like, for him, it was like, and even for me at the time, it was like, I've ridden to the highest part of Australia.
Yeah.
As if that tells you something about me.
Mm-hmm.
The actual experience was like no fun at all. It wasn't an exercise in you know, it wasn't an exercise in leveling up. It was just an exercise in boredom. You know what I mean? For me. So like there are other things that I could do. But what that was for me is like, if I could do this, this would tell me something about my ability to do an endurance sport or engage in an endurance event. And maybe that would tell me that I can do this, I can push through, I can achieve this, right? And so really, you know, kissing the chalet door for him, like in that context, kissing the chalet door meant something. In reality, kissing the chalet door for me was like, I will never do this again. I'll do this one more time to hammer those guys that I ride with. But, and even that's just an act of ego. It's like, once you've beaten them up the hill, like, what have you, like, it's like, I just got to get rid of this bike.
I hear what you're saying. I think I'm listening to what you're saying, and I think I keep getting caught on, and I know that you've already talked about it, but I keep getting caught on this idea that like, this is all well and good, but we're not anti-goals. Like, it is still important to have goals. And I know that you've said that, well, it's when the goal becomes the thing that's the problem.
Yeah.
So I guess, how do you balance that? How do you have goals without that becoming everything, especially when it's very easy to get caught up in that? I mean, and it's almost hypocritical me asking that, because I get caught up in that as well. Like, we're filming this podcast and we literally just had a moment where we were like, let's not talk about hustle culture, boo.
Yeah.
And then the cat's like roaming around here meowing, and we have to put him in another room because we just need to like hustle and get some stuff done.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question because we also fall prey to that. But I guess, how do you balance having a goal without making that every?
Well, I don't think it's I think it's this idea that the transaction or the goal actually defines something about me. So the goal starts to become something that tells me something about who I am, and that I've now become or am or becoming something. I'm becoming someone important. You know, this thing is telling you about me. You know, and that's the problem, because
Got it.
That's the problem, because we're shifting the center of my identity away from something that pre-exists and is true and has genuine substance and doesn't need to justify itself. It doesn't need, you know, it's you know, in its crudest possible form, it's like, if I live in this suburb, which is, you know, an elite suburb, then I'm actually better than you because you live in that suburb. If I drive this kind of car, then I'm better than you because you drive that sort of car.
Yep.
You know, it's like, I would never buy anything but a European car because European cars are better.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay, well, all right. So these are all trivial, but you know, these kind of little things seep into the way we understand ourselves as humans, where what we're doing is we're outsourcing identity to an external marker, to something out here. And I get that it's fine. I get that this point is fine because essence expresses itself, and that expression tells you something about who you are, right? And so that's the positive thing. When you're connected to your heart and your heart speaks, and your heart, we always say in Way of the Heart that your heart is the ally, the agent, and the ally, the advocate, and the agent of your essence. So, you know, you have this heart-based activity, which does engage the world. It does go outside. It does go into the field, and it does achieve certain things, right? The problem is that the center of essence is here. The center of essence isn't out there. And so when we make the center of essence out there, these things stop becoming helpful growth goals, and they start becoming identity markers. And that really quickly falls into comparison. It really falls into external judgment. It really quickly falls into the ego loves it because it's playing in the space of bigger, better, best.
Yeah.
The mind loves it because it creates stories around, if I could just do this. And most of the mind's stories are not about what you achieved. Almost as soon as you achieved it, the mind's already moved on to the next thing.
Got it. Yep. I actually think that this plays into this second characteristic of
Right.
hustle culture, which is like the glorification of busyness. It's achieving that.
Yeah,
It's
completely.
achieving that next thing.
Yeah, and that's a mind-based thing. One of the things about hustle culture is that when that becomes the goal, then everything is about moving towards that, right? And that is inevitably a forward projection. It's about becoming. See, the enemy here is not hustle culture. It's when you lose this center of, when you lose your identity to the thing that you're trying to achieve, right? And so for me, the big issue with hustle culture is that people ignore the fact that they already are a somebody in order to become someone. So it's this, Ram Dass says it so beautifully. He says, try not to become a somebody. He says, seek to be a nobody, because nobody is really somebody. And what he's actually saying in that, so I'll say that again, seek to be a nobody because nobody's really somebody. What he's sort of saying is you already are something. So this act of trying to become something more so often is about not recognizing who you are and actually betraying who you are, because you yourself don't value who you are. You yourself don't see the amazingness of who you are. You're not, of all the people in your world, you're not seeing your value. You're not seeing your truth. You're not seeing your essence. And if you don't see it, then you go hunting for it out here in these goals, in this hustle. It's called, for me, it's not hustle culture. It's the hustle to become. And that is a problem, because now someone is like constantly feeling like this is going to give me something that it's not. And to our point, what the mind does is, because this is always forwardly projected, what the mind inherently does is when you get to that, it then becomes out there. And that's what happens to a person who's not centered in heart and essence, but what they're centered in is they're letting their mind and their ego drive the program. And hustle culture or growth culture can easily become the vehicle that they use for that, because, well, why wouldn't you? Like, this is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with achievement. And so it becomes this kind of, it becomes inviolable. You can't ever bring any sensibleness to it. Because, like, so what are you criticizing? And like, we're not criticizing anything in terms of growth and development, having goals. What we're saying is, watch the little subtle shift. It's a dangerous shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if that little shift is where you're outsourcing identity to this goal that you want to achieve, I'm now this because I've done that. I'm now an alpine bike rider.
You've kissed the chalet.
I've kissed the chalet. It's like, yeah, like a sticker on the back of my car. Have you kissed the chalet? It's like, I'll probably make some of those, make me feel good about myself.
New merch coming out, actually.
You too could become a member of the chalet club. It's like, it all becomes a nonsense.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
When it's attainment based, telling me or signaling something about who I am, and it's not natural overflow, but it's actual grasping to become, that's a big problem. Because that never ends.
Yeah.
Ego will always want to play that game. Mind will always want to project another goal.
Yeah, totally. I think this kind of is a good opportunity to bring in the third characteristic, because I think we've covered the first two of it being output based, and then
identity shifting.
Yeah, identity shifting. And then what was the second one? Being busy all the time.
But busyness is a sign that, look how I'm busy, look how important I am.
Yes. Yeah, business is like a badge of honor. And then the third point kind of feeds into this, but it's sort of this idea that everything needs to be working towards your improvement. And the examples are productivity hacks, morning routines, turning hobbies into something that you can monetize. It's kind of, you're always upgrading. And this does feed into what we've just been talking about before. But this is a funny point, because I think that I find myself doing this. Like, Ted and I started a podcast a number of years ago, And it was a hobby, like it was a bonding activity. It was a way that we got to connect with our friends through interviewing them.
Yeah.
But of course, we were sitting there going, we also absolutely want to monetize this.
Right.
Or, we'll go and do like a dry sauna and a cold plunge. And that's a fun,
Great.
relaxing activity. But it's also, I really want to be healthy or whatever it is. And I think that those, that's a fine thing to want to do, but that tips so easily into, I'm going to use every moment. I'm going to, use my morning routine as a chance to just optimize and to be better, instead of it being a moment of genuine self-care or a moment of genuine spiritual practice. And by spiritual practice, I just mean anything that's bringing you back to your ground of being.
Yeah.
It's no longer about, journaling or meditation or yoga or whatever it is no longer about coming back to your ground of being. It becomes about, I'm doing this so that I'm becoming better.
Yeah, for sure. I think so much of that stuff is where it's just the subtle shift.
Mm-hmm.
So you start the men's group, and wouldn't it be great to have a men's group, and wouldn't it be great to really add value to men's lives? And, we're a little bit unrealized, many of us, and, we're still stuck a little bit and we don't talk about our feelings. So let's get some guys together. So you get 10 guys in a room and you sit around and a couple share, two of them overshare, one doesn't share at all because he just goes, holy smokes, what's this? And you're running the group and it's all going well, and you go, great. Okay, then the next week there's 15 guys there, and you know, oh, that's good. There's 15 guys there. And after 6 months, there's now 30 guys in a room. The 2 guys are still oversharing, and someone says you really need to get Carl and Eric to shut up, and they dominate the whole evening. And people have said that Carl's a pain in the ass. So you've got some management issues with the human dynamics and whatever. Carl's there again, is a problem, Carl. And you say to your mate, yeah, here's an issue, but man, there's 35 guys here. How good's that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're a year later, and the thing in 12 months had grown to like 120 guys. And you go, this is amazing. And then you're 18 months in and it's shrunk back down to, 20 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, what happened? Oh, wow, this is not good. You know what I mean? And you've just got enamored with, the idea that this is growing, this is great, this proves that it's effective, this is really working, plummet.
Mm-hmm.
Core group 20,
Mm-hmm.
Carl's still there.
Still over.
And you really value Carl now because of all the guys that came and went. Good old Carl turned up and overshared every time. How you love that guy? He's like the best guy. I'm going to make him my
MVP
2IC.
yeah.
Or it's like, I'm completely over this. I'm handing it over to Carl. And it's like, and what happens in that is the measurement metric became the goal, not why did it exist in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Because us guys just needed to hang together.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was 1 or 2 of us, it wouldn't have mattered.
Mm-hmm.
But when it became 120 or 130 or 150 of us, like we were really doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And now, for whatever reason, that's dropped. And now, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
We're really falling back. No, it wouldn't matter if there's 2. Like, you go back to the essence of the thing. It wouldn't matter if there were 2 guys there. The essence of the thing was about intimacy and connection, and it was never about growing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was never about reach or community impact by virtue of the fact that 300 people go to this, and now we've started up a hub there and a hub there and a hub there. That's all empire building stuff.
Yeah.
That's not the essence of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The essence of this is where the church went so wrong when I was in the church, is the metrics in the church didn't become spiritual depth, didn't become love. I mean, if you said that Jesus had a message, the message would have to be love, love one another because love is from God. You'd say that forgiveness was really, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. You'd say that forgiveness was a relatively big KPI. You'd say that grace, the empowering presence of empathy and understanding and caring, embracing the outsider. So inclusivity would have been a major marker. There's all these amazing markers you could drag out, and some crazy toxic ones if you wanted to, but there is amazing things that you could drag out. But when I was in ministry, the 3 big KPIs when I went to pastors' conferences were buildings, bums, and bucks.
Mm-hmm.
How many resources have you got? How many bums on seats have you got? How many people have you got turning up?
Mm-hmm.
How much money have you got?
Mm-hmm.
It's like buildings, bums, and bucks. That's what I used to call it. It was like, and you just go, it's very, very, very cynical.
Yeah.
Because we've got big facilities, we've got lots of people, we've got lots of cash. And then you go, but what about these other ones? What about the essence of what it meant to be a Christian? Have we got any of those markers in that community?
Absolutely.
So see how we shifted? We shifted from that to that.
Yeah.
And that shift was catastrophic.
Yeah.
So it's not that. And people say, well, there's nothing wrong with having a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with having good resources, and there's nothing wrong with being able to finance the thing that you believe. No, there's not. But when they become the sole markers and you're using those markers to tell you who you are, that is a major problem. Mm-hmm. Because what's happening is we're now drifting away from who we really are. Mm-hmm. There is this essence here. There was the essence of what it is to be Christ-like. And the number of your buildings, the number of your adherents, and the number of the money you've got in the bank is not a direct correlative to that. It doesn't correlate at all. If you took the KPI from Jesus, foxes have holes, birds have nests, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Jesus didn't give a shit about buildings, right? If there was a multitude gathering, one of the things that Jesus routinely did when heaps and heaps of people followed him is he walked off into the wilderness by himself. Wasn't interested in numbers. Wasn't interested in gathering a crowd. Crowds gathered and he walked away. Yeah. Or he hopped in a boat and went to the other side. Just wasn't interested. Now, as for money, he didn't have any money. His ministry was largely sourced by, and this was something no one will ever tell you, his ministry was largely sourced by benevolent women who support, women who believed in what he was on about and who financed his ministry. And when he died, he left none of these markers for anyone to inherit. So, here's the core message. And now we've drifted off over here. So you look at Christianity in Australia, it's gone from 48% of people who go to church to 4.6%. Yeah. That's a catastrophic fall. Absolutely. Because it's reflecting the fact that people aren't interested in those things.
Yes.
Right? Now that, I've picked on the church, right?
Well, I think that we're also seeing this
in our culture.
We're seeing it in our culture, and particularly with social media, right? Like if you want to have reach on, this is after doing only 6 months of social media for Way of the Heart. But you learn fast that if you want to have reach, then you need to do X, Y, Z because the algorithm doesn't like it if you blah, 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 blah. And before too long, you're playing a game where you go far out. I'm having to ignore or distort the actual message that I want to communicate. I'm not allowed to say the things that I want to say. I can't express what I want to express because I'm kind of molding it and deforming it into something that is going to appease an algorithm because otherwise no one's going to see it. And then it's kind of like, wow, I've shifted the center of gravity to now how many people can I reach? How can I do that? Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And what's missing is that
we've hustled. We end up hustling ourselves into something that is completely antithetical to who we fundamentally are. Yeah. I tell you how I think about this sometimes. I have on my deck, there is there's 2 old wooden chairs and a wooden coffee table, right? They used to be Western. They still are Western red cedar. My mum, for whatever reason, painted them. They were actually my grandpa and grandma's favourite piece of furniture. They bought it a bazillion years ago. I don't know when they bought it. I have memories of it from my youngest days of grandpa going out, taking it out of the garage, carrying it into the garden. We'd all sit down. Grandma would take one of the chairs. Grandpa would take the other. The rest of us would kind of sit on the grass on a rug, and scones and tea and bickies would all come out and we'd eat out in the garden. That was my grandparents' idea of like the best time, right? And if you look at my grandparents' house, it was a very simple brick house, 3 relatively small rooms, a tiny veranda on one side, a big garden out the back, and in the garden there was like a lemon tree, there was a mandarin tree, had a lovely lawn that they mowed. There's a vegetable garden, and there was Grandpa's veggie garden and a rose garden, and it was as simple as can be. But for Grandma, and they had an old Hillman Hunter, which was a pretty basic middle of the road car, you know. But for Grandma and Grandpa, it was like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah,
that's it. No upscaling, no more. It was like a good day for Grandma is, you know, the roses have started to bud. A good day for Grandpa would be the mandarins are coming in. He would sit on the ground with a pair of sheep shears and clip around the edges of the stones that you would walk up through the yard, right? And what I'm saying is it was a generation. They lived in a generation. Obviously, it came out of the Depression. It went through 2 world wars, all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't hustle culture. It was like be present for the garden. Be present for the morning tea on the lawn with the Western red cedar table and chairs. Put the rug out for the kids. You know, play French cricket with the grandson. You know, like beautiful, beautiful memories of a simpler time where Grandma and Grandpa weren't hustling to do anything more. The only hustle was like, you know, are the biscuits baked? Let's get them out of the oven. You know, it was. Now, I'm not idealizing 1920s or 1930s culture, right?
Thank God.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, you know, I mean, but what I am suggesting is that there wasn't this constant pressure for more.
Right.
Grandpa bought a Hillman Hunter, a blue Hillman Hunter. He just thought he just loved it. And he washed it and he cared for it, and and when he died, guess what he was driving?
The Hillman
He's driving a Hillman Hunter.
Yeah.
And someone had to get rid of it because, number one, by that stage it was a really old car, and Grandma had never learnt to drive. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it had a single garage, and in his garage was all where the tools were, and they were all ordered. So when my dad recently moved into care, I inherited all these old tools. They're Grandpa's old tools. They're still beautiful. He never leveled up. They just kept the same stuff. It was a nurturing of what is culture, not a like throw that out, dispose that, get rid of that because we've got to be here. And I think that's the way I often think about this. Can we come back into ourselves and realize there's something already there? There's an essence. There's a being. We don't always have to become something. In fact, we don't have to become. And if in the process of becoming we betray what is and become a stranger to what is, that's a problem, you know. And that's the direct problem that we're trying to address in Way of the Heart, so that we don't define ourselves by our busyness. We don't define ourselves by, you know, things that really have no power to tell you who you are, things that drift off and become antithetical to who you are. You know, the businessman who is in so much pursuit, I'm doing it for my family. I'm trying to create wealth for my family. Oh, yeah, but you've been doing that so hard that your marriage fell apart and you remarried, and I'm not judging anyone if that's happened to you.
With your kids.
Yeah, you don't see your kids anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, dude, at one point you got so enamored with goals that actually destroyed the very thing that you say you live for. How does that work?
Yeah.
It's craziness. See what is. There's something already there. Nurture what is. That's Way of the Heart 101. Yeah. So I'm on a bit of a rant there, but
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I hope you see that we're not against goals, but I hope you see that the subtle shifting of the goal from protecting, nurturing, and cultivating what is, to projecting to what could be, who I need to be, what I'd like to be, what other people want me to be. That's a tragic transaction. And that's what we're trying to deal with in this.
Absolutely.
And there's a second arc to that, and we'll pick that one up in the next potty.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, guys.
Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.